The following is a Samson production.
It's time now for the Sam Lesante Show with your host, Sam Lesante. A Samson production.
Well, welcome everyone to the Sam Lesante Show, and we are on location up here at Chateau. This is the 2005 Pocono Mountain Film Festival, and as you know, this is a very popular event every year. Today, I'm very honored to have a friend of mine, not a friend, but hope to be a friend of mine, but a person I've admired for many, many years, Robert Vaughn. You probably know him from many movies, most popular, Man from U.N.C.L.E. I want to talk to Robert about some serious things about his life and what he thinks about the political future in the country today, with actors and actresses getting involved the way they are. So, Robert, Sam Lesante, it's nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, Sam.
First of all, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. How you started, where were you born?
I was born in New York City, but I was raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and New York City, and Chicago and Washington. My parents were actors, and my grandparents were actors. It was the family business. And my father, who I didn't meet him more than 2 or 3 times, was a top radio actor in New York during the halcyon days in the 40s, where he did Gangbusters, FBI and Peace and War, Crime Doctor shows that the audience probably never heard of, but they were very important shows at that time in the 40s. And then my mother was, she was originally in Dracula with Bela Lugosi on Broadway.
Is that right?
And my stepfather was very active in the theater also, so it was kind of a foregone conclusion that I would be an actor. I guess the first thing I ever thought about being was an actor when I started, and I'm talking about 3 or 4 years old. And my mother taught me the soliloquy when I was about 5 from Hamlet, the to be or not to be soliloquy. And then one time I had an opportunity to do it in front of John Barrymore, he was actually dying that year. He died a little later that year. So I came out to California when I was 19. And the reason I came to California didn't have anything to do with getting into movies or television, because I thought that was too distant, not attainable. I understood the theater, I understood radio, but I didn't really fancy myself being in the movies or in television. I came there because of the weather, quite frankly. I was there one January. I was on the U.C.L.E. campus, and it was about 100 degrees on Rose Bowl day. And I thought, this is where I want to live, not Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is where I was raised. So that's how I came to be there, and I just worked around in addition to going to college, because in order to stay away from the draft, you had to go to college, and that's why I went back to college, as a matter of fact. And I just got to know people in Beverly Hills who were doing theater work. And I got to doing a lot of theater work, and as a result of one of the plays I did, a role in a movie, well actually the play was called End as a Man, but the movie was called The Strange One, starring Ben Gazzara, in the role that I did on the West Coast. And fortunately, Burt Lancaster came to see the play, and he signed me to a multiple picture deal while I was still, well, this was actually 30 days after I got out of college, so I had no struggle. I never drove a cab, I never was a waiter. I just got into the film business literally a couple months after I graduated from college, because Burt saw me in the play. And then I was supposed to be in the movie The Sweet Smell of Success, but I did get drafted, because once I did get out of college, I was no longer free from the draft. And by the time I got back from the Army, they'd done Sweet Smell of Success with a different person, Marty Miller. And so I had a chance to be in quite a classic movie, but missed it because of the armed forces. And that's kind of how I got my beginning, in television first, and then in motion pictures.
Now, you're talking about, you grew up in a family that were all actors involved in the theater. You went to college. Now, what was your major in college?
Well, I majored in the theater arts for my BA, then I majored in theater arts for my MA, and then I got my PhD in the philosophy of mass communication.
Right. Now, and this question is asked many people when they come to the film festival. I've asked this with Cliff Robertson, Jack Palance, Billy D. Williams, and Roberta Flack. Getting so many young people that want to, or even middle-aged people that want to get involved in acting in the theater. Is it very important that they take acting lessons or go into school?
It's important they take acting lessons, but it's more important that they go to college in a city where there's actual professional work being done, i.e. New York or Los Angeles, and to a lesser degree Chicago. I don't think if you're going to be in the show business, you should go to college in Butte, Montana, or in Alabama or something, where essentially there isn't that much acting business around. So if you're going to college simultaneously with acquainting yourself with what's going on in the theater world in these major cities, Los Angeles and New York, I think you're a step ahead, because if you graduate from many fine colleges, but you haven't really been around show business per se, you've been in the college show business.
Now, how important do you think that was to you to be involved in college, going to college, studying the theater?
Well, since I really had grown up thinking about the theater and thinking about being an actor,
you were ahead of the game a little bit.
I was ahead of the game. I knew what the stage was like. I knew what the radio business was like. So I basically, it just happened accidentally with Burt Lancaster. And some of my best friends, the one I went to college with, were certainly as credible as actors as I was, never did get into the show business, but I did. It was just a life of good fortune.
So you didn't have to struggle?
No.
You hit it lucky right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you graduated from college, you went to the armed forces, you came back. What happens when you came back?
Well, I
fell right into it again?
I fell right into it again and started doing, I got out in '57, and then I did a picture with Paul Newman in '58 called The Young Philadelphians. I was nominated for the Academy Award for that. And then, as a result of that, a director named John Sturges, who saw me in The Young Philadelphians, called me in for an interview on The Magnificent Seven. And I went from, once again, I fell into a hit movie. I didn't know.
In fact, I was just reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're the only surviving person left from The Magnificent Seven.
The last seven of the seven, I'm still standing.
Yeah. Charlie Bronson just passed away a while ago. The movies, meeting the right people, but however, you have to have the talent.
Well, yeah, because if you can meet all the people in the world, but if you can't really produce butts in the chairs, which is what it's about, you know, audiences. But by the time you get up to being chosen for major roles in television, you're usually pretty well known through previous roles. All over, there are many young actors today and young actresses who went from having no salaries to having $20 million salaries in 2 movies, whereas earlier in the business, the highest paid actress in the world was Elizabeth Taylor. She got $1 million for Cleopatra, and everybody talks about that like it was the second coming. And oddly enough, that's a minor salary now in the current Hollywood.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Folks, I'm talking to Robert Vaughn. You all know him for many, many years as the man from U.N.C.L.E. We're going to talk about that. Film, television, he seemed to have it pretty easy. He went to college, grew up with a family, was actors, and bingo, he starts right off. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, folks. You're watching Sam Lesante Show, and I'm on location here at the Chateau here in the Pocono Mountains. It is the 2005 Pocono Mountain Film Festival, and I was honored to be asked as a master of ceremonies. But not only that, as you know, each year we interview some of the celebrities that are here. It's my honor and pleasure today to talk to Robert Vaughn. Robert Vaughn, as we talked a little bit about before your career, you seem, well, you were born in a family, you went to college theater and got some nice roles. Of the people you have worked with, all right, and I know Jack Palance is very close to me, as I said prior to this interview, and working with Jack for probably since 1970, I've learned a lot from a person who is, I think, one of the finest actors around, okay? So just being with him, I know what I've learned from him, okay? Have you had any similar experiences working with people that you could share with us?
I would say that the actor that I worked with the most, although it was only 2 times, but one was a 12.5-hour miniseries, so it seemed like 6 movies back to back, was Jason Robards. He was a very close friend of mine. And the night that I was given the Emmy for a show that I was doing with Jason Robards, I said I particularly wanted to thank my dear and old friend Jason Robards, because he's a kind of a magical actor. Whatever angle you take, whatever scene you do, if you do it 3 or 4 times, it's always new with Jason. There's nothing, you're always surprised. He does something a little bit different. And that's a rare actor that can, you know, create a new character every 30 seconds with a different angle.
You know, Robert, that is really a talent.
Yeah.
That I was on location when Jack Palance and Blythe Tanner, they were doing back to when we were grown-ups, a Hallmark movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I ever experienced being in a stage, a sound stage, where they had the house built. But, of course, the dinner scene they must have done at least 10, 15 times. Yeah. But I've noticed exactly what you're saying that. Here again, I know I'm singing the accolades of Jack, but every time the scene came, there was a new surprise that Jack was able to present it. Now, does that come with experience, or what does that come with?
It comes with confidence in yourself that what you're going to say and do will come off real, I guess, for lack of a better word, is real. And this is the quality that Jason had also, is that it was always different, but it was always right. And that's I don't know what that is. It's called the X factor, why there are stars and people that aren't stars. Yeah.
Well, another thing is when you're working with people, I know a lot of people will come up to me and say, "What kind of guy is Jack? What kind of guy is Jack Palance?" Well, knowing Jack the way I know him, he's a great person, okay? Yeah. But sometimes he doesn't like to sign autographs or whatever the case may be, but he'll take a picture with you, okay? Yeah. Have you worked with any temperamental, high-key actors that you felt, you know, even though they are well-known, but just weren't the kind of people that you thought would be socialized with their...
Well, I know Paul Newman. I've done two pictures with him, the one I mentioned before, and also a picture called The Towering Inferno. And although Paul is a very friendly, outward guy, and has worked very, very hard in areas where it had nothing to do with show business, particularly the hole-in-the-wall gang for cancer patients, kids. He doesn't like to sign autographs, and I don't know why he doesn't like to sign autographs. Maybe he doesn't like to, has a germ fetish or something. And I really can respect the germ fetish, because when you go to a foreign country and suddenly you've got to shake hands with 30 people, there's a 31 chance you're going to get something.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
But he just doesn't like to sign autographs. He's very cordial, and as a matter of fact, when I was married for the first and only time, I brought all my relatives, who I hardly knew. Some of them came off from Minneapolis, and he spent time with every one of them, chatted with everybody. But he just didn't like autographs. I don't know why.
How about you?
I sign him autographs. I have no problem with that at all. I try to avoid shaking hands.
Yeah. Well, I could. And
put a pen in my hand.
Yeah. Yes. How are you, sir? How are you, ma'am? Moving on from working with these people, who did you learn from? Jason Robert. What happened that you got into television then?
Well, television just followed this play that I mentioned earlier. A bunch of agents saw the play, and they all tried to get me to sign with them. And one agent did. Actually, the agent that signed me had seen me in several other plays, and he kept saying, "Give me a call when you're in a play that's really you're going to stand out." Well, this particular role that I did in this play was about as good a role as you could ever want for a 21-year-old actor in the history of the theater business. It was just overwhelmingly terrifying. You terrified the audience. I mean, they were so. When I used to come out from the curtain call of that show, people would boo, and I'd just been, on stage a little earlier because they so hated me in this role.
Is that right?
Matter of fact, a lot of people thought I was very much like that person for years until they met me. I wasn't.
Yeah, you got a stigma.
Yeah, I got a stigma as being the most hated actor ever to appear on the stage in anything.
That's bad. You did your job too good.
Well, yeah. Well, I think Jack had that to some extent.
Yeah,
not as he was a scary actor.
Yes, well, yeah. You're absolutely right. Dracula, and then he always played the mean guys.
Yeah.
Okay, recently with the City Slickers and getting the Academy Award, you let him know he's a funny guy. Okay, but. So then you fell into this movie, which was called U.N.C.L.E. Okay, now what does U.N.C.L.E. stand for?
Well, it's a television show.
Yes.
Called U.N.C.L.E.
Did I say movie? I'm sorry, TV show.
United Network Command for Law and Enforcement is what it stands for. Now, when I did the pilot of the film, originally it was called Solo, which was the name of the character that I played, Napoleon Solo. But it seems that in an earlier movie, I think it was Goldfinger From Russia with Love, there was a character named Solo, a bad guy, in one of those two movies. So, for some reason, it was a big litigation problem. They couldn't make the title of the series called Solo, so they had to come up with something quickly, and they came up with U.N.C.L.E. And then they didn't have anything to fit to the initials, the U.N.C.L.E., so they had to come up with an organization. That's how it all started. Once again, as so much in show business, it all kind of accident and coming up with something at the moment.
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
Boy, it certainly worked. I mean, you had, it was a great success. How long was it on?
Just 4 years.
4 years. Wow, that's a good run.
Yeah.
You worked with
Steve McQueen.
Yeah, but also in A Man from U.N.C.L.E. Who is your co-host?
David McCallum.
Yeah, David McCallum. Is he still doing things?
He's in one of those CSI shows. I've forgotten. I think there are 3 or 4 of them. I don't know which one he's in, but he has a continuing role in that show.
How is he to work? How was he with the work?
Oh, he was wonderful. Of course, the fan magazines in those days wanted to create a problem by saying that we were at odds with each other, and which was never the case. We got along wonderfully, and we still correspond and talk to each other now 30 years later.
All right, before we go to break, I want to talk to you about, you mentioned about the fan magazines, the Star magazines, the Globe magazines, and you know, sometimes you pick up a magazine, according to what Jack says, and you look at your picture and say, geez, was I there? I never knew this happened, okay. Yeah. Has that ever happened to you, where there's been things written about you that were certainly not true?
Well, there was a couple of things written about me that weren't true, but I immediately corrected them, and one of my attorneys who lives in this area knows the people that own the Globe and the Inquirer, and he put in one phone call, and I got a correction the next edition of the Globe, I think it was. You know, they've been very fair with me, and they have, as you probably know, not only one of the best investigative teams in the country, and I'm talking about compared with New York Times and say, other major papers, but they also have some terrific lawyers who examine these stories quite thoroughly, and so they have the only person that ever won an award was Carol Burnett. She had some story about her getting drunk when kissing Henry Kissinger, or some oddball story, and she sued and pursued it and did get a retraction and some money, I believe.
Excuse me. I'm talking to Robert Vaughn, folks, and we're on location here at the 2005 Pocono Mountain Film Festival. We come back, I want to talk to Robert Vaughn about his political opinions and what's happening in Hollywood today. Stay with us. Welcome back, folks, and thanks for staying with us. I'm speaking to Robert Vaughn, no stranger to anyone in northeastern and central Pennsylvania. Great actor, and has accomplished a lot in his life so far. Hopefully will accomplish a lot more. Now, I want to get into, I go to your website, and I look up your name, and it says Robert Vaughn, blah, 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 and then it says Democrat, and then it says everything else. Now, first of all, why would you want people to know that your political affiliation? That's number one. And number two, the involvement today of the actors being so vocal about political issues. Some cases it looks like it's backfiring because the popularity of certain actors people saw them on a certain pedestal, just felt they shouldn't be getting involved in this realm, and the other thing is, this is probably one of the lowest years for attendance in Hollywood, even though the actors are coming out, popular actors are coming out with certain political themes, the country is not agreeing with them. So I know I threw a lot at you. Could you just give me some of your opinions?
Well, see, I don't think you should automatically give up your right to speak about any subject that you're asked about because you're an actor. If you disagree with the majority of the public, as was the case in the recent election, where the blue states lost, so to speak, that's all right. I don't think usually what they used to think in Hollywood, and I don't know if they do right now, is that if you can still put fannies in the chairs, you can be well, not Nazi, but you can be take a pretty formidable stand. And if you can't, then you wouldn't be hired anyway. But since, as you correctly say, there are so many people speaking out against the war in Hollywood, which was not the case in the Vietnam era. I was, according to publicity people, I was the first one to speak against the war, and there weren't very many people speaking against the Vietnam War at that time. Ultimately, the country came around and disagreed with the war, and largely because of Walter Cronkite, who went to Vietnam, came back and said we should disengage from there. And I heard a story that LBJ was famous for having 3 television sets in his office, in the Oval Office, and watching the news shows. And the night that Cronkite on CBS said what he had to say, LBJ just said, turn them all off. He said, we're done there. He said, I have no base now. Cronkite spoke. So in effect, the person who wasn't a politician, but indeed a celebrity from the news business, charged a tremendous difference in the carrying on of the war after that.
Well, you were really involved in politics because, correct me if I'm wrong, they wanted you to run against Reagan, correct, as governor, or is that true?
Well, that was a they that I never met. I don't know who they are, but...
reading in...
well, I'll tell you what happened, and once again it relates to Vietnam. I was made chairman of the Speakers Bureau of Southern California for the Democratic Party, and also chairman of registration for the Democratic Party. The morning after I made my first public speech opposing the war, which was January 29th, 1966, I never heard from anybody in the Democratic Party again. That was my brief term well, it wasn't my idea. If they were talking about it, it ended there.
So you feel, Robert, that even though a person, an actor or an actress who is well known, there's nothing wrong with them coming out and making a political statement and just doing what they have to do?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And I don't know how many people, whether they're people in show business or people in the news business, actually sway the voters. I think
they don't.
The voters tend to, are pretty smart.
Yeah,
and they could listen to 15 liberal actors inveigh against the current war, and they still voted the way they wanted to vote.
Yeah. Do you think, you talked about putting fannies in the seats, well, that's not happening this year.
I know. That's probably because the audiences don't like the pictures. It has nothing to do with politics.
Okay.
Okay. You know, maybe. See, every movie is such a spectacle now. I mean,
it is, isn't it?
When Jaws came on the scene,
yeah,
that was the first time any picture had opened as they could open.
What happened to the good old-fashioned acting?
Well, most of it is being done in theaters and also on HBO and channels like that. Whereas the movies are pretty much tied up, for the most part, except for a film festival like this one, in spectacular movies that have to bring in $50 million to break even.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I used to go to movies maybe once a week, but to go to a movie today and really see a good actor or a good story, okay? Yeah. I mean, there's all graphics, just shooting. I mean, I'm all for that for a degree, but you want to have a story sometimes.
Yeah, it all begins with the word on the page, and the fact that you have to be involved with the people on the screen in terms of them identifying with you and you identifying with them.
I have 2 minutes left. I want to ask you, I know Jack, I'm talking about my buddy Jack, there's not a day goes by that people don't call me and send scripts that I send to him. How about you? You're working now, you're looking, what do you want to do?
Well, I'm going back next Sunday for my 3rd season in England on a new show called the Hustle on the BBC, which is about 5 con men. Actually, it's about 4 con men and 1 con woman. And it's been a great success over there, and I was told recently it's just been sold for AMC in America, so it should be on over there, or over here, rather, when I'm over there, next year, January, or something like that.
Sure. So you're still going full...
As long as I'm vertical and can remember the lines, I guess I'll be there, hoping to have a little handout for my work.
Yeah. Well, you had a terrific career, you still do, and it's nice to see you here at the film festival. I know there's a lot of people that sometimes they have other things to do, but it's nice for actors like you who are well known, well respected, to come here and just shake hands. Not too many hands though.
Not too many
hands, but just to be here.
A glove or something.
Yeah. Well, it was nice talking with you.
Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Robert Vaughn. Thank you. Robert Vaughn, folks. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show, and we are here on location at the Chateau. I was very honored this year to be asked to be the master of ceremonies. I'm hoping I'm going to do all right. Don't boo me tonight, whatever you do. Okay.
Well, if I can find a big hook, if it looks bad, I'll.
The hook's coming out. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show, and we'll see you next time.
This has been a Samsung production.